So after an earthquake, how will Jumpstart interact with our customers? How will we notify them? 24 hours after the occurrence of the earthquake, that's the moment when we download the data from the USGS and do an overlay of which customers are eligible. Shortly thereafter, our customers will receive a text message from Jumpstart, which says, in the earthquake that just happened, have you or will you experience extra expenses as a result of the earthquake? You need to respond yes in order for us to initiate payment. As soon as you respond yes, we initiate the payment process that day. Depending on the payment method you have on file, the payment can occur as soon as that day, or it could take several days. And a question that all of our customers need to know the answer to is, how do we determine if we are eligible to receive the Jumpstart payment? The threshold we use is data from the U.S. Geological Survey shake maps. In particular, the threshold is a peak ground velocity of 30 centimeters per second. That's literally the speed at which the ground is moving. And this peak ground velocity of 30 centimeters per second corresponds to the red zone of the USGS shake maps. The USGS produces these maps after every earthquake that are color-coded from red, which is the most intense shaking, to blue, which is the least intense. A question that we often get is, what's the Richter magnitude that's associated with a Jumpstart payment? We don't use Richter magnitude for a couple of reasons. Richter magnitude is a measure of the amount of energy released, which is not necessarily the same as how a human experiences the earthquake and the amount of disruption and chaos that follows on. An earthquake could be very deep and then cause not such severe shaking intensity at the surface. Or it could be quite shallow and then cause really severe earthquake shaking at the surface, which is why we use shaking intensity. That said, for shallow earthquakes, which are typical in California, a Richter magnitude of about 6.0 is the smallest size earthquake that is likely to produce a zone of Jumpstart payment eligibility. A question we often get is, are there limitations on what we can use the money for after the earthquake? You can use the money for anything you need to recover from the earthquake, any expense related to the earthquake. So it's not just damage. It could be things like additional childcare or elder care expenses if the school or the senior facility is closed. Or let's imagine that all of your stuff is perfectly intact, but your whole apartment building is closed because of some gas main leak down the street, and you need to find a different place to stay for a while. These are just a couple of examples of how you would be able to use your Jumpstart money to be able to recover from the earthquake and meet your first needs. So a typical question is, what if actually I don't have extra expenses? Well, there are all sorts of unanticipated consequences that you might not know about right away. So it is very likely that in an earthquake big enough to cause a Jumpstart payment, there's going to be some disruption that you can't anticipate down the road. That said, you have 60 days to reply to Jumpstart's message. A related question is, do I have to report or submit receipts about how I spend the money? No. In an earthquake severe enough to exceed the threshold of payment, everyone will need $10,000 for something related to the earthquake. You do not need to submit receipts or report on how you spend it. A question that we commonly get is, how do we know there will be enough money in reserve to make the payouts after an earthquake? We are 100% committed to making good on our promises, which is why we have partnered with underwriters at Lloyd's who bear the responsibility of making the post-earthquake payouts. A typical question is, can I buy more than $10,000 of coverage? At this point in time, no. We have only one product available, which is a $10,000 payment. However, each adult at a given location can buy their own policy. So if there's more than one adult at a given location, each one can get a $10,000 payment. Likewise, you can buy a Jumpstart policy for every property that you own or rent. So if you own your home and also own a rental property, you can buy a policy for your home that you live in plus the rental property. Property owners of rental units can buy one Jumpstart policy per unit. So if there are 10 units, you can buy a $10,000 policy per unit. That's in addition to and independent of a Jumpstart policy that could be taken out by the tenants themselves.